Well, hi there. Welcome to the workshop. This is Chess-Based Workshop for another week. I'm Steve Lopez, your host. Thank you for clicking on the link and joining us. People ask me all the time about endgame table bases. How important are they? Now, if you don't know what they are, I'll do a brief explanation. It's not terribly technical, so just have a little patience here. We'll get through it. What an endgame table base is a special database of a particular endgame. Every possible position in a particular endgame. For example, king and queen against king and rook. No pawns, just those four pieces of wood on the board. There's an endgame table base file with king and queen versus king and rook. Contains every possible position of the legal position, of course, of those four pieces on the board. And what a chess playing program, a chess engine can do is access that table base file and play the endgame or analyze the endgame perfectly. It does make a difference. People will sit there and say, well, it's only a four-piece ending. Can't a computer analyze it anyway? It will analyze it. It will generally give you decent analysis, but it gives you better analysis with the table bases than without them, and it also analyzes much more quickly with endgame table base access. Now, I hear you thinking, where can I obtain these table bases? A couple different ways to get them. One is you can download them off the internet. There's a lot of files. Some of them are huge. It'll take you a while. So if you don't mind waiting, if you don't mind spending some time doing the downloading, they're out there. They're free. You can also purchase them, which is much quicker, but it does cost you a little bit of money. There is a package called the Fritz Endgame Turbo 3 that contains all the 3, 4, 5, and many of the 6-piece endgame table bases. So there you go. And when we talk about pieces in table bases, kings count. So when you're talking about 6-piece endgames, we're talking 2 kings plus 4 other pieces of wood on the board. So we need to make that distinction as well. What we're looking at here is a game I want to analyze. And I'm going to do something different today, and that is normally I do these videos in one long take. Today we're going to have an edit. We're actually going to, because I need to do some tweaking around between takes here. The first take that we're going to do, I've taken this game, Amos Byrne against David Baird from 1889, which ends in a king and queen versus king and rook endgame. Pure endgame, no pawns on the board. Okay, we're going to have Fritz analyze this endgame without table bases first, and we're going to look at that for a while. We're going to show you a few minutes of the analysis in progress. Then we're going to show you how Fritz analyzes the same endgame with table bases enabled. So what I've done before I started the video is I went in to Fritz and I pointed Fritz to the wrong folder. It's a different folder than what I have my table bases stored in. So I've misled Fritz. So I've pointed old Fritzy to the wrong folder, so it does not know that there are table bases installed. First thing I want to do, though, if I'm going to do analysis, is I want to make sure I have the right analysis engine selected and I have the right parameters set up for it. So hitting F3 on the keyboard, and there is another way to get here as well, which is go to the engine menu up here at the top and click Change Main Engine. Gets you to your scrolling list of all the different engines you have. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to change the hash table size. Normally I would go for a fairly large number here, but I'm only going for 256. The reason being I'm making a video here, which is using some of my computer's resources. So I'm just going to go for 256 megabytes and click OK. And Fritz is ready to go. Now I'm going to, again, there's two ways to get to the next function. What we just saw, you can either hit Change Main Engine or hit F3 on your keyboard. The other thing we can do to go to our game list is hit F12 on the keyboard or go back to Home and click the database button. Either one will do. I've got the game in here in this database twice. I'm going to select it the first time, go up here to Database, select Blunder Check to start an analysis. Set my parameters. I'm going to give it, well, we'll give it 40 seconds just for chuckles because I'm probably not going to let it run the whole way through the game anyway. I want a threshold value of 30, and I don't really care if it does any training. I do want it to store the evaluation. It doesn't have any annotations, but we'll uncheck Erase Old Annotations, annotate as variations, replace, and we're ready to go. Excuse me, I'm going to click the OK button now, and Fritz is going to begin to analyze this game without the use of table bases. Fritz is moving right along. It's taking about a second per move, and now we get back to move 82 or so, and it's thinking. Notice in its thoughts, if it'll pause long enough, you don't see down here where it's showing TBS as the number of times it's hit the table bases. That just shows that Fritz is not using table bases here. But notice it's taken a while. We've been looking at this for about a minute or so, and Fritz has gone back to about move 80 from the end of the game at move 87. So it's done about 7 moves for each player in a minute or so. Maybe a little bit longer. I haven't really been looking at the clock. We're going to let this run for probably another minute or so. Notice that Fritz is finding mates, by the way. The analysis here, mate in 7, mate in 6, mate in 8, mate in 11. You get back here to move 80 and suddenly Fritz isn't finding a mate. Fritz is finding an advantage for black. That's why it's a negative number of 14.32, meaning that black is 14 pawns ahead. 14 and a third pawns ahead approximately. But notice that Fritz is thinking here. It's not finding, just bang, finding mates now. Here at move 79 and move 80, it's finding a big advantage for black, but it's not finding forced mates. So keep that in the back of your mind here. At about move 80-ish is where Fritz stops finding forced mates without the use of table bases. Okay? Keep that in mind, and what we're going to do is we're going to pause the video here. I'm going to reset it back up so that Fritz will have table base access, and then we'll come back and we'll have Fritz analyze this game again with table bases, and we'll see what happens. Hi there, welcome back. It's about 10 minutes later for me. It's just been a couple seconds for you, but I had to stop the analysis and reload my table bases. We're going to go back here and remind you once again of what we found with Fritz analyzing without table bases. Fritz went the whole way back to move 80, starting with move 87. You know Fritz analyzes backwards through a game. Got to move 80 before it did not find any more forced mates, and it got back to move 79 for white and found an improvement where white could have done something a little bit better. Still would have been really an uphill climb, but the analysis is better than what was actually played. Anyway, I'll go up here to options and show you, when we look at the table bases GUI tab and the table bases engine tab, that I've now pointed Fritz to my table base folder. I've got a folder called T-bases where I have all the 3, 4, and 5 piece endings. I don't have a full set because I do use my computer for other stuff besides chess, and I do need extra hard drive space for videos that I've created and articles I write and graphics I've created and stuff. Table bases engine, pointing to the same place as well, C T-bases. So we click OK. We're going to analyze again. Remember, once again, Fritz went back to move 80, and it took about 2 minutes to get back here to where it was actually analyzing. We're going to hit F3 to show you that Fritz is indeed still loaded with the same hash table size. Won't matter because I'm not going to be spending that much time analyzing this whole game. So 256 megabytes for the hash table size. We'll click OK. And then we'll go back, click the database button to bring up the game list. We're going to highlight the same game on the list between the same 2 players. Go up here to the database tab, select blunder check. Time once again is 40 seconds per move, threshold is 30. Everything is still checked the same way. We click OK. Fritz loads the game, and look what it does. Almost instantly, it gets the whole way back to move 66 using table bases. Remember before that it went back to move 80 and began analyzing. It didn't find any more forced mates starting with move 80, okay? And it began to think. Well, this time it goes the whole way back, and actually it took a couple minutes to get to move 80. It took about a minute to get back to here, and then we spent about another minute looking as it continued to analyze, and it got back to white's 79th move. Note that almost instantly, I mean just in a second or two, it got the whole way back to move 66, and it's still finding forced mates. It has not found a position yet in which only an advantage can be gained. We're talking forced mates for black right down the line here. Notice too, we now have pawns on the board, but it's still finding mates. Why is that? Because the way the table bases work is that if a position is found in which these pawns come off the board and it gets to that 4-piece ending, it will use those table bases for its analysis. So it is taking much less time. We're the whole way back to move 63 now. it's only been a couple of minutes. So you've actually gotten another 15 moves, 30 plies of analysis out of the program in the same amount of time. And it's more accurate analysis, because notice that here again at move 79, move 80, it's not finding, oh, here's where one side could get an advantage. It's not an advantage, it's mate. Every analyzed move so far has resulted in a mate. That's what the table bases do. That's why having table bases is important for analytical purposes in Fritz. If you're having Fritz analyze your games, you should have table bases installed and give Fritz access to the table bases. The way it works, basically, we'll stop the process here, is that when you're in the main chessboard screen of Fritz, you just go to the application menu, the green button up here, go down here to options, and type in the path to the table bases, to what folder you have them in. If you don't know what folder they're in, well, you're going to need to know what folder they're in, but if you don't know the exact path, if they're buried in a subfolder somewhere, you can use the browse button to bring up a Windows file select dialog. Actually, it's a folder select dialog that lets you point it to the correct folder. It'll show you a hierarchical structure of folders on your hard drive. So it's real easy to do. If you've got the table bases, either because you've purchased the Fritz Turbo Endgame, or because you've downloaded them, there are places on the internet where you can download chess endgame table bases for free. Just buying them is quicker, because it does take a while to download them. There are a lot of files, and they're pretty big. Even with a fast internet connection, it's going to take you a while. So it's your choice. Buy them, download them, but use them is the important thing. It will help the analytical process when you're analyzing your games using Fritz afterward. By the way, some engines use endgame table bases, some of them don't. All of the ones that ChessBase currently offers, Fritz, Ribka, Junior, Hierarchs, and Shredder, all will use endgame table bases. There are other engines you can download from the internet, both from chessbase.com, also from various sites. UCI Chess Engine, some of them will use the table bases, some of them will not. Check the documentation for whatever engine you're planning to use to have analyzed. But all the stuff that you get from ChessBase will use the table bases. So I just wanted to show you the big difference between using table bases and not using them. This was just so much faster and so much more accurate using the endgame table bases. That's why they're important for analytical purposes. Also, if you want to practice endgames, it's important to have them on your computer, so when you're practicing endgames with Fritz, Fritz isn't going to play a bad move. Fritz is going to play the best possible move. Now, some people will argue, what kind of endgame training is that if I can't possibly win because my opponent is playing perfectly? Well, that is training. That's important training, because the way to win in the endgame, excuse me, is not to rely on your opponent's mistakes, but to know the proper technique yourself, because with proper technique, you can win in the endgame, and you can practice your endgames against Fritz. Until next time, for ChessBase Workshop, I'm Steve Lopez. Till we meet again, please do have fun.